Alright guys, such coming again today. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Mercury's giving his perspective on the OpTic gaming situation this past weekend in Dallas, Texas. Top 4 at the tournament. Not a bad result by any means, but OpTic will need to get significantly better and go further if they want to try and win the World Championship. There are two teams right now, FaZe and Thieves, that seem way ahead of the rest of the opposition, certainly in a longer series format where map pool comes into play. What can OpTic do to try and get even better? They've come top 8, top 8, top 8, top 4. Maybe they can leapfrog that into a seriously impressive result on either one of the final two tournaments of the season. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. I do love this image, by the way, because this picture was taken a few months ago, but it looks like it was taken in 2007, given the camera that nature had in this one. I thought that was pretty funny. Just, you know, there was a bit of drama this weekend, wasn't there, about the guys in the front row of the VIP sitting on the seats. And, you know, I know K-Sam was getting some flack for this. I don't really think it was deserved because, as he replies to this and says, don't let them see this, because here he was in Toronto, literally just sitting on the floor in the front row. And he would have done that, right? But I think they decided, of course, to put the extra row of seating in. It was a bit of drama of the weekends. It wasn't the major drama. Like, obviously, there was stuff happening on the main stage as well with Miami and Super and all this type of stuff. Hopefully, we're going to see a bit more of that. These guys, they won the championship in Texas. They walked it on the main stage. This is like what the main stage looks like. Actually, a good little shot of the venue here, really, because we've got the VIP seating immediately behind. Then we've got the other seating on the left and the right-hand side. This is the desk, as you guys can see, and in the background you've got the casters right there on the left. Then you have the challengers pit, which pretty much surrounded that. On the right-hand side, you can't quite see where the watch parties were over here. Then you had all the activations at the back. But, yeah, Vivid, he actually came on our show briefly at the end of the weekend and said, yeah, I don't know how this Mack guy was down there in challengers. Like, I decided that we were going to team together and dominate. They were good online, but Vivid said that once they got to LAN, they were just different gravy. They only lost 3 maps all weekends. 2 of them were red card search and destroys. So, yeah, they were really good. They absolutely earned their spot at the Esports World Cup as well. So that was a guarantee. Of course, at the World Championship, there will be a Challengers event there as well. The top 3 at Challengers Champs, they also qualify for the World Cup. So, of course, in addition to these guys. So I guess if they win it again, then it's the other 3 teams that finish in the top 4 would be the argument. Mamba finished as the MVP of the tournament as well. I think he was he going by like Big Head or something? Like he went by a couple of different names, I think. These are the NA teams that have also qualified for the Challengers finals. So there is like a Challengers LCQ that will determine the other teams that get to go to the World Championship. But of course, Omit with Mamba, Vivid, Mack and Craze, they qualified. Omit Brooklyn with Brack, Prolute, Standy and Uleak, they're also going to be there. The Team War roster, the Spartans roster, and you know, pre-roster changes. Because of course, things can all change, right? This is Challengers at the end of the day. Of course, Thieves won the tournament. Should HyDra have been the MVP? Maybe, right? Like, he was the MVP of the finals, I would say, over the entire tournament. I think you give it to Scrap. Over the entire season now, there really is no argument other than Scrap. I mean, he won 2 MVPs. Cellium did win an MVP. Simp, did he win the other MVP? So, but both tournaments that Scrappy won, he was MVP back-to-back. And they won the 2 tournaments at the end of the year. The argument for Cellium over Scrap, because, you know, I think Scrap was the more impactful player this year over Cellium, although Cellium was really good. I don't want to, like, get that twisted, right? Cellium's been mega impressive this season. But I think in terms of most of the numbers lean Scrap's way in terms of impact. And you look at the victories, though, people would argue, well, Cell had 2 wins, Scrap had a 1. So that would be the argument when it came down to choosing MVP of the season. But now Cell doesn't have that argument anymore, because now Scrap's won the same amount of tournaments and he has more MVPs on the season. So it's difficult to argue it otherwise. Maybe you could argue HyDra, but it's kind of impossible to argue HyDra when you've given Scrap MVP for both tournaments that he's won. So realistically, Scrap's the MVP of the season. I expect that to be confirmed at the World Championship. Renko will be Rookie of the Year. There's really no other argument there either. So at least it's pretty clear cut, I guess, for the community. But HyDra has been incredible. I mean, this guy, when he's on point, is, I don't know, it's tough to even describe. He's walking on water, basically. And Drill talks about it and says, pack out HyDra, because Drill worked with HyDra for many a year when he was learning English and coming up in the scene, is what up-and-comers should aspire to be outside of the game. He's obsessed with this, always looking to improve, growth mindset, mentally resilient, product of his work ethic, habits and routines. Guy's always switched on. Now, pretty interesting to hear this, really, because certainly there are some players to which this does not apply. But there's always going to be the discussion around, well, naturally he's very talented, right? There's always a bit of a debate about this because talent can be grown on some level, but also like fundamentally you've got to have that like natural dexterity or whatever that allows this to be possible. So, you know, I think HyDra is a product of, you know, unbelievable natural ability and talent, in addition to like everything outside of that that just makes him one of the best COD players that you're ever going to see, to be honest. And it was difficult. I mean, I remember we sat down in Dallas, like in Allen, the event before, and they asked us the question sitting on the couch, okay, who's the best player in the league right now? Who's the most talented? And, you know, like I said, Scrap at the time, which aged pretty well. Others, you know, said, I mean, look, you can say a number of players. Simp is unreal, like, no doubt. Cellium's up there. But HyDra from like an SMG side is, yeah, right now just one of the best players I've ever seen. I mean, yeah, he's the only player that reminds me of Scump, really. Like watching Prime Scump play on the SMG, the only player that's reminded me of that is HyDra, really. I mean, Pred has a similar play style, but he's still not HyDra. And also, it is worth discussing real quick when we look at this team. That this could have been a team is the point. Like, they nearly had HyDra. They could have got him. You guys remember when they were making the roster changes? And HyDra, as Ronnie Intel said at the time, was 95% guaranteed on the team. They were going to have Scump, Shotzzy, HyDra, and Cammy. That was going to be the team of 4. But then they decided for Modern Warfare 2 to run it back. They brought back aBeZy, they brought back Dashy. And then the rest is history because it was an absolute disaster from there. Of course, it worked out in the end because after that season, Scump did retire and then they won champs the next year. So, you know, it all kind of worked out. But HyDra, if they made that call, if Scump didn't change his mind and run it back with a previous team, HyDra may well still be to this day an OpTic player. And we may have got to see this trio play together and Scump would have been on the flex. And then HyDra and Shotzzy might still be the SMG duo to this day. I mean, I don't want to imagine what that would be like to play against, and both of those guys are on point. But anyway, just some of the numbers to compare some of the players, because there are very few SMG players ever that have a positive KD in the finals. Scump's record is just absurd. Over 30, I mean, what is that, 42 finals he played, he won 31 of them, had a 1.1 overall. The other guys don't have that kind of number, but still, Shotzzy's up there. I mean, Shotzzy's numbers are actually really impressive for an SMG in finals, but HyDra's numbers are just even better, averaging a 1.12, 7-4 record in finals. Even Kremp was talking a little bit about this. We actually sat down with him on the show briefly. Here's your boy, there's Kremp, and, we had a great conversation with Kremp, actually. It was really, well, I felt pretty flattered that he gave us all the time that he did, because he was sitting on the show for like 35, 40 minutes, and we talked about the matches. We talked about all sorts of stuff, but we did ask him, like, okay, which of your teammates are the best gunny? There was a question in the chat. I probably should have pressed him on this a little bit more and said, okay, why no Dashy, why no HyDra or whatever. But, he gave his top 4, and he said Aches, BO2, Scump and Formal in Jetpacks, and then Shotzzy in recent times. He reckons this has crazy gunny. Obviously, he did play with HyDra in Vanguard, but I mean, HyDra was phenomenal then, sure, but he's even better today. I think that's the scary thing about HyDra, is that you could argue that for a large part of his career, he's actually just got better every single year. You might not argue that this year or last year, because Modern Warfare 2, when he won champs, was probably peak HyDra. I mean, the guy was literally doing it all. But even then, like the years that preceded that, he probably got better every year, and part of that was likely to do with maybe Kremp influence to some degree. But let's talk about Mercury's and the current situation on OpTic. People found these tweets up from Killer back in 2019 when he was talking about Mercury's, because, that's when Merc kind of first came into the scene. It was notable, playing some BO4 chals. Some of them went well, some of them didn't go so well, but all these years later, he's now on OpTic Texas, and as he says after the weekend, GG's Thieves, lost 3-1, small mistakes that made the difference, good luck to everyone still in, looking forward to champs. So, yeah, as Merc says, small mistakes on the weekends. Difficult weekend for OpTic in terms of the results. The way they lost is what I'm trying to say. Like, FaZe and Thieves, both of their matches were challenging. As Merc says, GG's to FaZe and Rocker, lost and won 3-1, Champs Sunday locked in. And yeah, it was small mistakes against Thieves. It was that control, right? I mean, OpTic will look back on the weekend and they'll say, wow, Thieves won this tournament. And I wouldn't say Thieves won the tournament at a canter. They didn't. It was hard work for Thieves. But they were the best team, and I think they were probably the best team by quite some margin. Certainly the finals, FaZe put up a good fight, but the maps that Thieves won, they won relatively comfortably. They obviously lost to Heretics in that close best of 5. They beat Toronto, which was also pretty close. And after, they beat Surge in the first round, dominated them, and then they got bopped out by Falcons. That was certainly one of the talking points of all time. But OpTic were up 2-0 on the HyDra control, up, 1-1 in the series. They'd won the game 1 against Thieves. Game 2, they lost on the dealership. Game 3, they were up 2-0 on the HyDra control, and then they lost it 3-2. That was the dagger, right? But if that went differently, I mean, who knows, right? Maybe Thieves win the series anyway. I would still say that they probably would have done. But if OpTic just won that control, it would have been a guaranteed Game 5. Who knows what happens there? We could have a very different tournament on our hands. And it was a very similar story against FaZe as well. So, as Merc says, lots of optimism to take away, because he's played 2 tournaments in his career. He's made Sunday both of them, right? He came 3rd with Toronto the event before, 4th with OpTic here. And look, maybe this event would have been 3rd had the bracket been different if Heretics had lost to Thieves rather than beating Thieves. Then, OpTic would have potentially found themselves playing Heretics for top 3. That would have been a really fascinating series. I'd love to see like a show match right now between OpTic and Heretics, because I just don't know who would win at the moment. I think it'd be really competitive. But, OpTic could have beaten Heretics had they played them on the first match of the Championship Sunday. But of course they didn't. They had to play Thieves. That meant a top 4 finish. But, it's arguable that OpTic could be the 3rd best team in the world right now. It's difficult to say, but they played the 2 best teams and they lost both of them pretty marginally. Heretics, they're also very good, and they were 5-0 in the qualifiers, and they beat Thieves this tournament, but when they played them when it mattered on Sunday, they got 3-0, whereas when OpTic played them when it mattered on Sunday, it was a closer affair, right? It was a closer affair than Heretics put up. So Mercury's understandably optimistic for the World Championship. I mean, look, they play FaZe in the first round of the World Championship bracket. If they win that, it doesn't exactly get too much easier, but that is the real challenging game. They then would play, I think, the Ultra series, potentially in the second round. Ultra, of course, was maybe the team they would have liked to have played first, but at the end of the day, if you want to win the whole thing, you've got to beat the best to get there at some point. And maybe you might argue that actually the first rounds is where you could have your opportunities, right? Because you've got several weeks to prepare for that one specific matchup. You can prepare all sorts of ideas in search, respawn, whatever you want to try and do. And also OpTic, they now have a good amount of VOD to look back on, right? I mean, they have a series against FaZe and Thieves, and just naturally speaking, FaZe will go back to the series that OpTic, lost against them, and they'll say, okay, we won the series. Whereas there's probably an awful lot that they can take away from that in terms of the way that they can play some situations better. And of course, they lost the search in that series, OpTic, and won the control. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how this goes in the very near future. I just wanted to quickly mention as well before we close out the video, because everything was on the Sunday night. We turned up to the tavern, I think it was the Inwood Tavern, and it was cool to see everyone there. I mean, like, so many people from the COD scene and the HaLo scene were there as well. Obviously, Blazers enjoying it. Formal came in. Loads of the HaLo guys were there. Got a quick snap with Dashy at the end of the night as well, because, Dashy, we ran into each other as I was leaving. And Dashy was like, we got to get a picture real quick. And, well, steak dinner coming soon. Not at this event. We'll see. Like, it will happen at some point. It's just a matter of time. Anyway, enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.
When you team with some shooters, what teammates have the best gunny in your opinion?
Probably Pat in Black Ops 2. Probably Formal and Scump in Jetpack games.
CleanX, Vanguard.
Huke, Paco.
No, I was thinking Shotzzy and MW. Actually, I don't know. It's very tough. Like, Shotzzy and Huke and MW, like, if you 1v1 them or 2v2 them, it felt like you're playing the same person.
I feel like Kyler is more like snappy than Shotzzy off the hit, but obviously Ant was gross.
Yeah.
Like even yesterday, bro. Yesterday he was snappy.
It's hard. It's like with Kyler and Pat in Black Ops 2, like I never played against them.
Yeah.
But I saw the shit that they were doing. It's nuts.